Welcome back. As we prepare for the upcoming summer season, it's important to take precautions against pests like mosquitoes and ticks. Consumer Reports has conducted a study to determine the most effective repellents to keep these insects at bay. Their findings can help us make informed decisions to protect ourselves and our loved ones from bites and potential diseases. Health reporter for Consumer Reports, Kevin Loria, joins me to discuss. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
Now, aside from being a pest, what are some of the more serious health concerns of these mosquitoes and ticks?
Sure. So, beyond the itchiness and annoyance, mosquito bites can actually spread serious illnesses, as can ticks. So, one of the common ones spread by mosquitoes in the US is West Nile virus. This typically, if people develop symptoms, it can cause flu like symptoms, but in some cases, it can be more serious. And then there's, a huge number of other illnesses out there spread by mosquitoes and ticks. So, definitely a lot of stuff that's worth looking out for in these warmer months.
And can you talk about how often this affects Americans, especially in regard to mosquitoes and ticks? Because I think most people just view them as, just insects that are annoying, but there is something a little bit more in regard to that. So can you talk about how often it affects people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we talk about mosquitoes, so an illness like West Nile will affect, a couple thousand people each year. There are rarer diseases spread by mosquitoes too, like Eastern equine encephalitis, which doesn't affect that many people, but can be very, very, very severe when it does. And then when we talk about mosquito-borne illnesses in the US, in some places like Florida and Texas, and especially in Puerto Rico, mosquitoes spread dengue and chikungunya, and these can be very, very serious infections. Last year, there was a CDC report that even documented a couple of locally acquired malaria cases in Florida, Texas, and one in Maryland. And then when we talk about ticks, there we are talking about a large number of diseases that affect a lot of people. Lyme disease, by some estimates, can infect more than 400,000 people every year, and that's spread by black-legged ticks, which also spread illnesses like babesiosis and anaplasmosis. There are the spreading Lone Star ticks, which are becoming more common in a lot of places. These spread ehrlichiosis, and then they also spread this pretty scary allergy to red meat, which can cause an anaphylactic reaction. And then there are the larger dog ticks that people find, and these can spread Rocky Mountain spotted fever and other illnesses. So there's really a lot of stuff out there to be aware of.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, what are some ways we can reduce attracting mosquitoes, as well as where are they usually located? I know we know it's outside, but are there any particular locations where you tend to run into more mosquitoes than others?
Sure. So when you're outside, like you said, if you're outside on a warm day, it's pretty likely that you're going to encounter mosquitoes. You are going to find them in places near there is kind of standing water. That's where mosquitoes like to breed. You'll also find them in places where there's a little bit less airflow. So anywhere where there's, a lot of foliage, anywhere where it feels pretty kind of dank and humid, these are the sorts of places you're going to encounter mosquitoes. Ticks you're going to find in places where there's kind of tall grass or where you have areas where people live that are close to forests where you have kind of deer and mice running through. And so, kind of to avoid attracting these things in these places, there are a few things you can do. You can always wear long sleeves and pants. Closed-toed shoes can also help. Wouldn't want to wear anything that's too tight that a mosquito can bite through. There are some things like dark clothing or perfumes or aftershaves that might attract mosquitoes, so you might want to think about that when you're going out. And then, of course, you can always wear an effective insect repellent. That's one of the things that will definitely help keep these things away.
Yes, and we're definitely going to delve into that. One of the most popular ways to avoid mosquitoes and ticks is the use of a repellent. Can you detail CR's testing and methods for testing some of the best repellents?
Yeah, so this is actually a pretty cool thing that we do. So most of the testing that we do is done against mosquitoes. And so to do this, we have these test subjects, and what they do is they apply repellent to their arms, and then they wait 30 minutes, and then they actually take their arms and they stick them into this box that has 200 disease-free mosquitoes. And they hold their arm there for 5 minutes. They watch to try to count each landing, each probe, looking for a capillary, and each bite that occurs. After 5 minutes, they'll take their arm out of that box, put it into another box that has a different species of mosquito, hold it there for 5 minutes as well. So then they'll get up, they'll walk around for 10 minutes to kind of simulate a little sweating, a little real world exercise. In half an hour, they'll repeat that test with the two boxes. And then they'll keep on doing that every hour after that until either the repellent fails to protect or 8 hours have passed. Because after 8 hours, I think that you can say that you're definitely safe and protected. A repellent fails if a person gets 2 bites within one of those 5 minute time spans, or one bite in one box and then one bite in the next 5 minute section in the next box.
Now that's a really cool experiment, and it definitely takes a lot of brave people to do that. I'm
Yes.
curious to know. You mentioned that sometimes the mosquito will go onto the arm. What does a repellent actually do? Does it stop the mosquito from actually just coming near you at all, or does it just stop the bite?
So, I mean, it depends on how effective it is. I mean, ideally, it is going to kind of keep the mosquito from, it'll kind of prevent the mosquito from wanting to land there in the first place. It'll kind of send it away. In other cases, in a repellent that is wearing off or maybe less effective, maybe the mosquito will land and kind of, it'll feel some sort of distaste or something like that, and so it'll get away after that. But hopefully, it stops it from even, landing in the first place. But most important is if it prevents a bite.
Now, your research found that not all repellents are effective. Can you expand on that finding?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are obviously a ton of repellent products out there, and some of them are marketed as all natural or kind of not containing certain ingredients. But the fact of the matter is that when we look at repellents that don't contain kind of one of the main EPA registered ingredients that we look for, the most common one that people are probably aware of is DEET, but there are others out there that are effective. But when we look at some of the alternatives, a lot of these might offer some protection, but usually protection that won't necessarily last very long. So in some cases, some of these all natural products, they might last for, an hour or two as opposed to the 4 to 6 hours that you might get from another product.
That leads to my next question. Are there any myths or just false methods about keeping mosquitoes away that have been trending? I know for myself, when I did this research, I would see that lavender is a good repellent. Have you found that to be true? And I know a lot of people are interested in that because they do look for more natural products.
Sure, and I get that. That makes sense. And I think that in a lot of cases, when we look at a lot of the alternatives that pop up and a lot of the ones that you see kind of people talking about, in some cases, it's just something that there's not a lot of research to support. And so, I wouldn't want to say like, oh, definitely doesn't work. But also, if it hasn't been tested, then I wouldn't want to tell somebody to do it. In some cases, let's say it's a repellent that has been tested and contains lavender, and maybe it's one of those ones that helps keep a mosquito away for an hour or so or something like that, but it might be the sort of product that requires a pretty frequent reapplication. You also see, I mean, people are interested in things like citronella candles and stuff like that. And in a lot of cases, there's just not a lot of evidence that these things actually can keep mosquitoes away, unfortunately.
Now, what are the active ingredients a consumer should look for?
So the main ones that we look for are DEET, oil of lemon eucalyptus, or OLE, picaridin, and IR3535. And so what we found in our tests is that most of the products that we recommend, that we say they do really well. So there are DEET sprays, wipes, and lotions that contain 25 to 30% DEET. Some of the ones that we've tested that contain 15% DEET also do very well. For the OLE, oil of lemon eucalyptus products, the ones that we found effective are sprays that contain 30% OLE. And then when we look at the picaridin products, the ones that we found that are effective are sprays. Most of them contain 20% picaridin. I think we do have one in our test that contains 10% picaridin, which has also repeatedly done very well.
Now, CR, or Consumer Reports, recommends using repellent as one part of the strategy toward protecting yourself from insects. And another thing that people should look out for is their backyard. What can people do to make sure that their backyard isn't infested with a bunch of mosquitoes and ticks?
Yeah, so one of the most important things that you can do always is you just want to make sure that there's not any standing water out there. And it's really surprising how little water there needs to be for mosquitoes to kind of have this effective breeding ground. So you want to, approximately once a week or so, you want to walk around the yard. You want to dump out anything that has collected water or rainfall or anything like that. So that might be a bird bath, it might be a flower pot that doesn't have anything in it. It might even be just like a tarp or something like that where some water has pooled. Like even that, you just want to make sure to flip it over, dump it out, because mosquitoes don't have a huge range. And so if you can keep the standing water away, and if there's not many mosquitoes breeding around you, you're going to really reduce the numbers out there. The other thing that you can do, because they like these dank, kind of humid places, is if you can clear away foliage and debris and stuff like that, that's also going to help.
And how useful are electric methods for keeping insects away?
Right. So you can imagine that sound right there of like a bug zapper or something kind of buzzing away at night. And, I think that, if you've heard that, it sounds like it should be effective because you hear it going zzz, 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 as it is killing insects. But the thing is, what most research on these has shown is that it's typically not killing a lot of mosquitoes. These things do kill other beneficial insects, things that we do need in the environment, and they kind of make the environment outdoors actually a more pleasant, great place to be. And so most entomologists would tell you to stay away from the bug zappers and things like that are out there. If you're looking for something like a mosquito trap, there are these things out there based on a CDC AGO trap, and these typically look like buckets that mosquitoes will fly into to try to breed in, but then they either can't get out or they get caught in some insecticide, and that works. The other electric thing that can work is just like a really good fan because mosquitoes aren't great flyers. So if you have an oscillating fan, that will help keep them away.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, honestly, this is a really important segment that we're having because I know I can't stand mosquitoes, and so I'm taking it all in right now. So once again, I just want to thank you so much for kind of educating our community and what we could do to, have a fun and safe summer. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you, Kevin.
To learn more about this article or other articles written by the Consumer Reports team, please go to their website at cr.org or stay connected with them on social media at Consumer Reports. Stay tuned, we have more for you right after this.